Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Pictures Podcast. I'm your host David and joined with me as always my co-host Brian. Brian, how are you?
Oh, David, I'm happy.
I'm happy too. We are joined for the first time ever with a special guest. We're joined by a huge fan of the podcast. I would almost go to say our number one fan, if not for my parents.
Sorry, Evan.
Sorry, Evan, in Canada. Sorry, all the girls in work who religiously watch this. But we are joined by a very good friend of ours, Mr. Richie DeLee. Richie, how are you?
I'm very good, David. Thank you very much for having me on. It's an honour.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell us, Richie, why are you joining us? What are we here to talk about today?
We're here to talk about this really... It's kind of like an independent show. Not too many people have heard about it. It's the HBO's The Last of Us.
Yes, our second episode we talked about, episode 1, so we talked about our first impressions for the show, but now, a mere 9 weeks later, we're here to talk about the season as a whole. So, Brian, what do you think of well, actually no, hold on, let's I'm gonna put a stop to myself right there. Let's go through, I suppose, for the three of us, our relationship to the show. So Brian, you're probably the oldest of us when it comes to your relationship with the show, so talk about your relationship to the game.
To the game. You're taking me back to the likes of, what year was I in 2013 in school? First, second year? Somewhere around that time. Oh, I fell in love with The Last of Us. The game, I thought it was just going to play out to be this one generic thing based on the quick trailers, and everyone was talking about it. And I watched it as opposed to playing it back in 2013. So you can imagine waiting anxiously this whole time for seeing this world and set of characters again in any form of medium. Been worth it to stay alive, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
The Last of Us game, it's like this is the future of high quality, emotional, gut-wrenching gameplay. Not movies, not TV shows. This made me look at a studio for a game franchise.
Yeah.
To think that's my favorite game studio.
Mm-hmm.
Naughty Dog is the best game developer studio there is. You know, you can say, oh, I like Warner Brothers better than Disney, or I like Universal better than Paramount. We don't say that for games until Naughty Dog came along, because, man, no, The Last of Us, and then I'll just stop there.
Mm-hmm. Richie, what about you? How did you become interested in The Last of Us game?
Well, I became interested in it when I heard that it was Game of the Year and that a lot of people were talking about it, and it was highly reviewed. But I actually played it back when it came out. I think it was around 2014. I borrowed it off a friend of mine from school, and I actually didn't finish it. I didn't finish the first game. It kind of bored me within the first few hours, and I know you had a similar experience, David, when you played the first one, and you didn't finish it the first time, and you've only just recently gone back to it. But yeah, I didn't finish it 8 years ago, and then when I was off work during COVID, I decided to pick it back up again just to pass the time, and I played the first game. And I played the second one then straight after it, and I just fell in love with the series overall. So then I was very excited for the show to come out as well.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. I had a similar kind of, fell out of love with it, I suppose, that I had started. I think I started it maybe 3 times, and I got a couple of hours in, and for some reason I just didn't continue, and I let it go a couple of months. But when they announced the TV show, I was like, oh, okay, no, I actually am going to have to play this game, because I just felt like I needed to play it first. And even in the first episode, sorry, the episode where we talked about the first episode, I said that I was slightly ahead of the show, and I had intended to finish the game before the show ended. In that time between it, I've played now the whole game and played the second game the whole way through. So I think the same as Richie, I fell in love with it as well.
So this is all fresh in your head, even the first 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of comparing it 1-to-1, having just experienced it. And I think we should dive right into the actual show, talk about it. And full spoilers, as normal, for the whole Last of Us Season 1. I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was great. I thought it was some of the best television that I've ever seen.
I think it's my 3rd, 4th favourite show ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's high praise. Richie, what about you?
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed it overall. I don't know about you, David, because obviously, as Brian said, it's so fresh in your memory because you've only just played it. But the more I look back on it, I think I found it hard to enjoy it in parts because, I'm such a big fan of the games and, I'm so familiar with the source material that I found it hard to separate the two. And it was almost like I couldn't get into the world because every time, like, Pedro or Bella would say something, I was like thinking about the way Troy Baker or Ashley Johnson would say it. And I kind of found it hard to remove the two and think about it objectively. But I think overall I definitely did enjoy it. I think the first couple of episodes are stronger than the last few.
Yeah, I completely know what you mean. That you're comparing it one to one, and you are like actually comparing it, and you're putting performances up against performances.
Yeah. I almost would have preferred if I knew nothing about the games because then at least I could watch it and it would be a completely fresh set of eyes because it's not like things obviously get adapted all the time from books and from films, but I don't think there's ever really an adaptation where line for line it's the same. Like you might know the story of a book that gets made into a movie, but you haven't heard like another voice actor deliver the same line in a different way. So I think when you have that in your head, it's kind of hard to, separate both of them. So I found it difficult as the episodes went past because I was always thinking about like, oh, is this moment going to happen? Or like, I couldn't get fully invested in the world because I was kind of thinking about it as a TV show rather than, just fucking closing my mind off and enjoying it. But I definitely think it is one of the best adaptations that there have ever been. Like when you think about other game adaptations, Uncharted, I haven't watched it, but I seen the trailer and I refuse to watch it. So maybe my opinion's invalid. But yeah, I just think that's it. Kind of hindered my viewing experience in a way.
I wonder if that adds to the beauty and quality that the game is, because you're right, Richie. No other medium for adaptation, especially for games, has dialogue literally be the same, let alone scene setups. So because they approach the show by, if we can make it better, let's make it better. Why would we change it if we like what we already have? That's what the creators said. So the fact that a lot of it is word for word straight from the pages, and it's the same, I think that says to the quality that a game has presented itself in The Last of Us, and why it's so good. It's like, it's already good, why change it? Now you can just banter back and forth as why they should or should not have done that, but when they did make changes, they tried to do it for the better. And I will say, Richie, there are some things, I know you'd agree with me, that were not so good in being made change for the better. There are some episodes we can get into, or certain scenes, or certain storylines, that episodic storylines, that were not so thrilling, not so fun to watch. But I think that's a testament to how great the game is.
Yeah, I think the something that you said there about like, yeah, maybe some of the stuff they added wasn't the best, but I think that the thing that the show does really really well is that fundamentally it keeps the story the same. It adds other elements to it, whether those are good or bad, that's kind of up to yourself. But the fact that they kept the story the same, the story as it is, is a perfectly good story. But when you add the other things, you're not taking away from the actual story. I know specifically what you're talking about, which is the arc in Philadelphia
Yeah.
that neither of you really liked, with the army, the
It's-
group of insurrectionists who
Yeah.
rebelled against Fedra.
Yeah.
They were kind of two new characters for the TV show that didn't quite work as well because they weren't in the game.
I'd just like to say quickly that the reason it didn't work for me, and you can add to this, Richie, in a moment, but the first 3 episodes, even the first 4 episodes, and the fourth one was where we were introduced to this Kansas City storyline. I'll stick with the first 3 episodes. The episode 1, and then the Tess episode, then the Bill and Frank episode. Those 3 bombed it
Yeah.
with show and don't tell. And the quality and success and beauty and quality aside of why those episodes are great and fantastic and brilliant and we loved it, and I'll just keep running out of words here. But when I say they did show don't tell, they did that. They showed us why we were falling in love with us, and they showed us the story. They weren't telling us. When they came to Kathleen and Perry, those 2 characters, they did a lot of telling their story as opposed to showing us. So I'll give you an example. Kathleen's in her childhood bedroom reminiscent, and she confides in Perry saying, you know, I saw my brother in jail just before he died, and he told me to forgive Henry, and, you know, I don't feel like doing that. What's the point of that? So you're telling us this sob story for us to care and understand why we should feel empathy for this character, even though she's a villain for this story. Well, why don't you show us that instead? You know, show us that scene, cast an actor, have him in jail, have her be the brother, make us feel, you know, a bit somber about her brother, show us him getting killed, show Kathleen's reaction, and then we'll understand why we should care about this situation. Just like they overly spent the time with Bill and Frank. Why are you showing this episode? Why are you focusing on these 2 lads, committing almost an entire episode's worth to it? You're showing us because it made us care not only about them, but it made us care about Joel and Ellie even more. It made us understand. It showed us. It didn't tell us. So it feels like that just lowered the work that they did. Not bad, still good, but the bar was lowered a bit.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. The fact that we're saying, it's not as good because it was already better. Do you know?
I think maybe, like, if you compare the first 3 episodes, specifically the first and the third, that the first episode had the whole sequence with Sarah leading up to the infection breakout, and then the third episode with Bill and Frank, is that in both of those instances, you're expanding what's already there. Like, you're just showing more in a certain aspect. Whereas with Kathleen and Perry, you're adding. You're not expanding, but it's a plus. You know, you're creating a new story for them. So I think that rather than expanding something that's already there and making that, giving more information, making that great, that you're adding these things, but you're not expanding because they weren't there in the first place. So I think you're right there with if they had shown that, and then, you know, shown that scene where he's in jail and then cut to her in the childhood bedroom, and then it's just as simple as repeat that line, you know, oh yeah, my brother told me to forgive.
Or make it the opening.
Yeah.
I know that was the Sam and Henry episode, but just re-edit it around. Look how they did the Bill and Frank episode. That was much extended. It started off with that flashback in that where was it? Where was the old woman in the East Asian country?
Yeah, I think she was in.
Yeah, so that was
Korea.
the Bill and Frank. Was it? No, sorry, correction. It was not the Bill and Frank episode. That episode started off with Joel putting rocks in the water, moaning for Tess. So, okay, that's the Bill and Frank episode, so they could have done around. What about you, Richie? What do you think of what we're talking about here when it comes to the show don't tell and the possibility of the quality decreasing or increasing?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think the show overall takes a dive in episode 4 it starts really, really strong. And I know what you're saying about Bill and Frank, like why show us these characters, but I think it's important. I agree with you. Like it helps us empathize with Joel and Ellie's relationship even more. It shows that even though this is a very hostile world, that people can still be happy, you know, and they can have a relationship together, and love is still possible, and you know all the old cliches. But I definitely think that that episode was so strong, and then it kind of just pitfalls after that. And with five, it's just far too clunky. I love Sam and Henry, and I was really excited to see their characters. They're some of my favorite characters from the part one of the game. And then when you kind of just add in all this background noise that's just there to try and give context, but it's too clunky, and you know that it's only going to end, or you know that it's only going to last the duration of the 40-minute episode, because you know that's kind of the way the team of The Last of Us, the season one, they tell kind of people's stories on an episodic basis. But yeah, I just thought that it was far too much. As you're saying, I would have preferred if they had done it differently, and kind of just spent more of the episode with Henry and Sam and Joel and Ellie and their relationship, and exploring, and you know maybe coming across something else or some other obstacle. I just think, yeah, it took a dive then, and then I don't think it really recovered until David's episode. David's episode was good. Well, actually, moments with Tommy as well, but for me, the final episode was fairly underwhelming. Too.
Richie, you said you liked this show. Now all of a sudden you're changing your opinion. Did you like the show or not?
No, I did. Yeah, I liked it, but I'm just trying to think about it.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard to discuss an entire season of TV as opposed to like a movie.
I
You know?
think saying, I think voicing some criticism about something we love,
Oh, of course,
further vocalizes our love for something.
Yeah,
So no, Richie, plow on.
yeah,
Degrade it.
No, but as you know as well, like I wasn't a massive fan of the first game either. It wasn't until the second game where I really thought, holy shit, you know, this is something unbelievable, if you know what I mean. Like for the same reason that, as we said, David, the two of us never made it through the first game the first time that we played it. You know, it didn't grab us. It wasn't until really the second game that we kind of we really cared about what was happening, or the world that was presented to us, and you know, Joel and Ellie's relationship. But you can't have a second game without the first one, so that's why I suppose it's nice to or it's good to look back on the original and you know think about it as well, I suppose.
yeah.
Noobs.
So yeah, so Richie, like you said there, you think that it picked up really with David's episode, and he's kind of, I suppose, the most villainy villain. He's not like, you know, an overarching villain throughout the series, but he is the most kind of sadistic, evil character that we meet in in this season of the show. Brian, how did you feel like he compared to his video game counterpart?
Oh, you want to start talking about comparisons between characters in the game and their counterparts
Yeah,
in the show?
it's a natural progression, I think.
Oh, I've stuff to say.
Yeah, okay.
We'll skip over the Tommy bit in a second because we're on the David episode. Based on how they were doing these mini story arcs, you knew they were gonna introduce David to us and sort of show his side of things. And, you know, they had a difficult job. How are they gonna make this a cannibalistic pedophile?
Cannibalistic pedophile rapist.
Yeah.
Every bad name under the sun, basically.
Yeah, like take up the worst person they could possibly be and just make them worse. How are you gonna have us enjoy our entertainment in following this character? Mm-hmm. Because that's what they've been doing. We follow some villains sometimes in the show, and they did it with this one. And I'll just flat out say it, I preferred David in the game because his appearance alone came across somewhat inviting as a safe haven. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, you don't trust this guy, but maybe there is a chance he's not that bad. Maybe there's a few flaws within him, but he can maybe become somewhat of an ally. Something different to how Bill was in the game, because he was a grunt, and he was a bitch sometimes, and he was rude, but he was an ally. I loved his introduction. Comes in to pick Joel up, slams a machete into the affected. Get off your ass and on your feet. Like, you don't get that in the show, but you got that in the game. But this David in the show, just from the get go, something felt off. You knew there was something sinister about him. And it didn't take too long when we got to him a second time with, they brought in the deer, and here comes a meal, and he talks about, forgiveness, because they found Ellie, and they were talking about retrieving her and then bringing her back, and then the girl whose father was killed by Joel, and the guy stabbed Joel, she's saying, you should kill them both, yay! And David comes in, slaps her across the face. That you just put the final nail in a coffin. Okay, this guy is beyond redemption. There is no way for me to care. And that's fine. Have a villain. But I didn't even really like the look of him. He just felt ew.
Yeah, from the get-go, as opposed to in the game where you kind of you spend a little time with him first, and you are invited in, and you're like, oh, this guy's not that bad, and then you're like, oh, this isn't actually a good guy. Whereas, like you're saying there, from the beginning, there's just something off straight away. There is no inviting aspect.
There's nothing welcoming about him. Let me hit home by saying this. In the game, it was a bit of a hit to the heart with a sledgehammer that David turned out to be from the crew that attacked Joel and Ellie, and it just put you into a fit of rage when it was revealed that he was a cannibal, and then even more, he's a pedophile rapist. So that turned from upset to rage. Whereas this guy just turned into something ew and like, ugh, like, get away from me, and let's just rid this dirt from the earth.
Yeah.
So I like the episode, and I love everything when it comes to Ellie and Joel. Everything. You don't need to ask me that again. Every episode worked great, and so the episode where oh baby girl.
Yeah.
So
that, I think that episode highlights especially Bella Ramsey, like her acting in that. Like, she's fantastic this episode.
And to me,
this is episode 8 we're talking about now specifically.
And to me, I don't know how you guys feel, but that semi-closes Joel's arc. Semi-closes it, because he has a bit left to do in the finale, but it's because that's his daughter now.
Yeah, definitely.
That's his arc close. He's happy.
Richie, how did you feel? I suppose you initially, I remember before the season came out, you weren't too certain on Ellie being played by Bella Ramsey. How did you feel about her as a performance, if you're comparing 1-to-1?
Yeah, and I don't know why I was worried about her, to be honest. I guess probably just because I'd seen interviews and stuff with her, and Ashley Johnson is so ingrained in my mind as being Ellie, and Ellie from the games, that I just thought that maybe because, I don't know, that she didn't look like her, that she wasn't going to do a good job. I was a bit nervous about Pedro as well, to be honest. But the two of them absolutely surpassed expectations. Her especially. I thought I was more nervous for Bella than I was for Pedro, but she actually ended up being the better of the two, I think. And you're 100% right about episode 8. That's kind of the moment where their relationship is solidified, but also like Bella becoming Ellie, I would say, as well. Like, I love the bit when she's in the cell and she bites his finger, and just how she delivers that line, and the cheek and the kind of the aggression that she gives off is reminiscent of that of the game. And I think the fact that she said in interviews that she hadn't even played the game, the fact that it's so similar, I think is testament to the direction and Druckmann being involved and being on set and stuff too. So I think they struck like the perfect balance as well.
I think so, yeah. And I think that they definitely, having Neil Druckmann on being a showrunner, like, he was the director of the game, that he is the showrunner of the show. Like, he knows Ellie and Joel inside and out. So I'm sure that in the casting process, seeing Bella and Pedro together, he was like, "Oh no, that's Ellie and Joel in
Yeah.
live action."
I remember it's just wow. This show was fast tracked. Now thinking back, like well, maybe it's the gust of at least a year and a half ago from the announcement of the show and the casting of the characters, because that was not done in the same, let's say, a week. But yeah, Pedro Pascal, good, happy casting. Like maybe I think traditionally us, stupid people would think, oh, Josh Brolin, yeah, of course, or Hugh Jackman, yeah, obviously. No, 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 no. Pick great actors, and we're happy with that. Who else was going to play Bella Ramsey? Who else is going to come across as short and young as she is? In appearance, age, doesn't matter. It's also about great acting. You weren't convinced in Game of Thrones, you're convinced now.
Yeah, 100%.
I also just like to touch on my love for the character of Tommy, especially as a supporting character. I really like him in the games, and I suppose he was the one I was looking forward to the most in the show. And not that I was disappointed, I think I just found it to be a little bit lackluster. Maybe I didn't get too much time to spend with him. Maybe he feels more like a softened version of Tommy. Like, I would believe the Tommy in the game would kill you almost as easily as Joel could, whereas the Tommy in the show feels more like he's been living in civilized society has softened him a bit. Whereas, and you know what? That's not a bad thing. That just hits home even more as to I love Joel and Ellie even more because of the limited love I have for Tommy. I look forward to season 2 and what they can do for him. And yeah, I like the Tommy episode. We didn't get enough of him, and well, I suppose to touch on the characters, I wanted to ask who was better in the game and who was better in the show. We can eliminate, we can remove Ellie and Joel from this list because you can go back and forth, or it could just be too easy. But if you ask me that, like to show how to state how good the quality of the show is, I like Tess, Bill better in this show, and I like Marlene better in this show than I do in the game. But surprisingly enough, I do like Tommy and David, kind of little pedophile rapist. I like them two characters more in the game than I do in the show.
I'd say for me in the show, I preferred Bill, obviously Frank, because he's not much in the game.
Yeah.
Bill, Frank, and Henry. No, Sam. Sorry, I'm confusing them.
They-
Sam.
yeah.
Because they changed up an aspect of him, and he's deaf in the show.
Yeah, I can't. There you go. I forgot about Henry and Sam. I like Henry and Sam both even more, way more in the show than I do in the game. It made me fall in love and care about them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What about yourself, Richie?
I'd agree with you. I actually think that every character is better in the show. I know you said Marlene, Brian, but you can't say that because it's the same person. But
Good point.
I thought every character was better. Henry especially, he was a standout. If you look at the final scene where Sam's death and how he delivers the line, I think the actor did such a good job in that moment. But I actually think all the side characters are better. The only characters that I think in the show, the only characters that I think are better in the game are David and Joel and Ellie. I think Pedro and Bella obviously are phenomenal, but it's just, as I was saying at the start, it's so ingrained in my mind that they'll just always be the top for me. But I think aside from that, everyone else is better. I actually really liked Tommy's character, and I know that you were saying that he might be slightly tamer in the show than he is in the game, Brian, but I think maybe that's a good thing, because obviously we can't say too much about season 2, but I think if you kind of...
I know what you're saying, Richie, because what they are going to likely do in season 2 will just even hit home a hell of a lot more with Tommy's arc with the show. Because if you know where Tommy ends up in the game, and where he'll likely end up in the show based on his introduction in that episode 6, it's just gonna be all more poetic. So it's not a bad thing. It's just not what I wanted, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Looking forward to even more now.
But I'll just say the scene in the bar, especially between Joel and Tommy, you know, when Tommy walks away and he forces Joel to make a decision. And also the scene where Tommy breaks down in the barn and Joel breaks down in the barn and he tells Tommy everything. I think the two of them are fucking fantastic in that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one aspect of The Last of Us that I've loved, it's a part of the first game and it carries over into the second. So I won't talk too much about obviously season 2. We're talking about season 1 here, but the murky waters that this game and this show tread, that Joel isn't a good person, even though he's the main character and he develops this relationship with Ellie. There are certain scenes throughout that you get the sense that, oh, that's really brutal, and that's nearly as bad as some of the things that that villains do. Specifically in episode 8, where he tortures someone to get info on where Ellie is, that he stabs him in the knee and threatens to pop off the kneecap. And then specifically in the final episode, when Ellie is up and when she's up for surgery and Joel is told, no, she's going to die for the cure, that he goes through the hospital and kills everyone. Everyone he comes into contact with, he kills. And for some people, unnecessarily kills. Like, he goes, and that is, like, really bad, you know, that's villain worthy. But because he's the main character for us, and it is kind of a heroic act that he's saving this girl that he spent, you know, the guts of a year with and has developed a relationship. His, you know, daughter, for lack of a better word, he has developed this father-daughter relationship with, that he's going to save her. I think it treads that line so well of, is this character a good guy, really? I don't know how either of you feel about that.
Ellie plus trouble equals Joel kills everyone.
Yeah.
That's what you got. In the game, it was done sort of panicky. Like, you know, Joel was trying to sneak around everyone. It was an anxious sort of sequence, trying to get in quick and get out and not mess around. Whereas Joel was like processing in his head from the room down the stairs, just blank.
Almost like a Terminator.
Because he could only think about the idea of losing his daughter. He did lose his daughter. He failed. He lost that. And now he's just playing over in his head the reason why he was looking to kill himself. And he couldn't do that. Nope. Not gonna happen. He's like, this ain't happening. Like, it's like switch mode. It's like a switch went off.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, grass is green, water falls, Ellie is not going to die. I'm not going to lose Ellie. So he was a robot going around killing everyone. Now, I don't think I was a fan as much as it was executed, because it was like pretty much a couple of shots stitched together, sort of somewhat slow motion, almost like a montage, as opposed to one scene leaving a whole sequence of scenes leaving one scene and entering the other, like a regular scene setup. But no, there was a bit of background music. It was slow motion. It was done. It was easier, I suppose, to make you believe that one guy can take out this army, because the way it was edited and it was done. Whereas if it was done sort of in normal speed and normal time, because it's just a couple of shots of him in certain rooms killing people, as opposed to the gameplay, you know, where you're following him throughout the entire thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even when he gets to the operating room, kills the surgeon, and then he just picks up Ellie. He's still a blank mind. He's only processing the fear of losing her. He doesn't pick her up, anxiously, and says, "I got you, baby girl." All he's thinking is, "She's mine. You're not taking her."
Get her out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Save her.
like it's like that's almost a bit scary to think. It's like, no, I'm keeping this. You know,
It's seeing what he's capable of, and
Yeah.
that he's not willing to let her go no matter what. There is nothing stopping him.
what do you think, Richie?
I agree with you completely, Brian. I was very underwhelmed after the final episode. I just think it could have been done so much better. Like we got an hour and a half for the first episode, and the final episode was 40 minutes for what is the biggest part of the story and what sets up the entire second season. And they decided to strip it back and do it in like a 3 minute slow mo montage. I just thought it was dumb. I would have well preferred if we had to spend some time maybe with Joel in the cell in the hospital, and him like figuring it out and deciding what he was going to do, and like take some time and make it tense, and like have him even go stealth mode around the hospital like you do, and pay homage to the game almost, and like go through him or go with him like through this mission. I think the fact that they like stripped it down to him walking around with an AR and just like shooting people with basically no resistance was just kind of, I don't know, it seemed a bit lazy. I was quite disappointed. But to go back to the earlier point, I think what the game or what the show does very well is show how much of a villain Joel is, because I didn't really realize after I finished the first game that he's a bad person. And maybe that's because video games are full of violence and you're killing NPCs and you're not really thinking about it. Maybe the show like humanizes people more, and you realize kind of the gravity of each decision that he makes. But I think the show makes it very clear at the end when you're in the car and Joel is lying to Ellie, like it's like without even thinking about it. You kind of end up just rooting for Ellie in the end. You're not really rooting for Joel and Ellie anymore. You're kind of just, I don't know about yous, but it kind of, it turned me off Joel, and it made me just think, right, well, fuck you. I can't wait until like Ellie finds out about this or whatever. It kind of just made me side with Ellie more than anyone else. I think it was good how they did that.
I think that's a great thing to make it not so okay, the fact that Joel did this. I even like when Joel lies to her again, when Ellie asks him to swear. In the game, Joel says "I swear" with so much needy emotion. It's like he's being dead serious. Like you can feel it because you played it. You did it yourself. Like, "I swear," And in the show, he says "I swear," like he was Terminator mode, like he was just an automatic machine, because he can't register the idea of losing her. That's not a bad thing. That's just like what Joel will be if you threaten to take what's his. And just even more exciting and sad for this overall story, because you start off with Joel, and you see where this ends in this season, and you don't know what to think. You don't know if you should root for him. Or I'm rooting for Joel all the way through and through. Joel's my favorite character of The Last of Us, no doubt. Game, show, doesn't matter. I even like the at the end there, they touched on it a little bit more. They gave us a bit more meat. I like that he was comparing his daughter to Ellie. Like he kept on talking about her a little bit she had a nice, she had a cute smile. She was more girly. Not saying that you're a girl. Like he's praising the everything good and bad about his daughter, and he's saying, "Oh yeah, you're good too," but not in that type of sense. It's like he's treading water very lightly. He doesn't want to get on her bad side. Because he wants to love her, and he wants to look after her, and he wants her to feel safe. And it's like Ellie has given him what he's lost, and Ellie doesn't feel like that. because it feels like she's just lost and lost, and what she might have had, it was lost through betrayal.
I suppose a last kind of point that we should talk about is just was there any scene in particular that you guys were excited to see go from game to show, and did it stick the landing for you, or did you think that it was better done in the game, or do you think that it was something that was really good to see? Richie, do you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, I think I was most excited for Ellie battling David because, that's obviously the moment where Joel's not around anymore. She has to fend for herself for the first time, and you really see her, her go through that kind of character arc. And the way it was done in the game, I loved how brutal it was. It's like it was almost uncomfortable to watch. As in, like, she just kept driving the knife into him, and there was blood splats on the screen and the whole lot, and you're kind of like, oh, you're kind of just thinking like, fucking hell, am I still rooting for this girl, or she kind of lost the plot and all, and kind of makes you think about where she is in her own mind, like as a character and everything. But I liked how they done it. I'm so happy that they kept the same kind of shot. Like if you compare the two side by side, they're practically the exact same. But I was excited for that, and it definitely delivered. So
A scene that was done so well in the game, I thought they excelled and exceeded it even better in the show. There's a few scenes like that, like some even just humorous scenes, and but for me, I'll tell you this: Tess's death scene was really strong. It was. I like the way it was done in the game. Not that it was differently done by Fedra troops, but they didn't show it. The fact that they made it done by the infected to show us the horrors of that of what they are and what they can do, and to show us in detail how they infect, and the terror, dude, guys, back me up, the terror on her face and in her mouth, her jaw was open, she herself was like in a blank state. All she could just process is, I'm dead, I'm gone. uh, Probably couldn't even think, because she's looking in the way they even shot it, right over her shoulder, and it showed at the field with all the infected storming across the frame. They're all blurred out, and the horrors. I'm telling you, watch the scene. Her face, and then she's trying to light this. She's anxious, like, it's like, quick, get the lens on the camera, quick, before the sun moves, before the sun goes away. It's like you have a limited time to do this, and the lighter's not lighting. And then the couple of shots they have of her feet backing up against a pillar, and then the pillar's there. You're stopped. You're trapped. You're dead. You're gone. Nowhere to go. Watch the scene again and pay attention to how detailed they did that. And then you go back to the shot where you see all the infected blurred out, just storming everything, and one is still notices her, treks over to her slightly, and in a sort of a appealing way, not vicious. You think it's gonna attack her? No, it's what, did it sense that she was bit? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it just does what it can sometimes do. It finishes the job, just finishes the infected. But you think in another execution that would be a disturbing thing to watch, and that you don't want to watch it again. But because of the fear factor, the terror, the horror of that scene, it just makes the scene so well done. It hits home Tess's character, and it's that scene. Tess dying in the game, in the story, in the show, is the reason why Joel and Ellie become closer even more. And she finishes the job. She lights the lighter, burns them all, blows them all up, went out like a boss. Tess was great. That whole scene, man. Now, after this, you're gonna go watch that
I
scene.
am actually, yeah. For me, the scene I was most like, I wasn't excited to see it, but I suppose I was anxious to see it, and I was like, oh, I when something bad is coming, but you're like, you can't help but look away, and it's the scene where Joel tells Ellie that she's not his daughter when they're having a fight. that he says like, "You're not my daughter and I'm not your dad," you know, and he really like punctuates that in the game, and I felt that so hard because I was like, oh, they've been building this relationship and you could see it going that way, that it is a father-daughter relationship and they're both good for each other in that sense. But to have him say, "You're not my daughter and I'm not your dad and you're just gonna have to deal with that," I was so excited to see that in the show, and I felt like that one didn't deliver as much. I think maybe one of you guys said it earlier, that not in this episode but when we were talking about it, that it felt like the actors were saying the words as opposed to feeling the emotion of it. So I think that scene is played out better in the game than it is in the show, but I still enjoyed it and I still felt hurt by it because I was connecting with their story, and to have them have that bump in the road, it felt difficult to watch. But then was redeemed by, like you said earlier, when after the confrontation with David, when she comes out and he finds her and he's like, "It's okay, it's, you know, baby girl, it's all right, it's fine." And then from then on, it is very much a father-daughter relationship.
Do you know what scenes I thought were really done and are staggered throughout the whole show? Is Ellie when she's smiling.
Yeah.
So when she pops out the pun book and she starts listening to jokes of Joel while he's filling the gas can for fuel, and when she's saying, "No, you guys are going to come with us and don't worry about Joel, I'm just going to ask him a million more times until he says yes, and he's just going to do this whole back and forth, no, never," and like she's smiling there, and even when she's ripping into Joel, it's like, he just has an asshole voice, just don't mind him. And even in the car scene where she's going through the magazines, like, "Wait, hold on now, let's see what this is all about here. Whoa, why are these pages stuck together?" And then there's everything, every time she's like smiling, she's just got a bundle of joy. And then at the end of it, Joel asks her to whip out the pun book, and she has a big giggle on her. She's so happy.
Yeah.
Like Bella, like you think the emotional moments, that's what you're gonna see as to why Bella Ramsey was perfectly cast, but those sweet tender moments like that really hits home as well. Like when he's teaching her how to shoot, or showing her how to hold a gun, or how to stand guard, like all those little subtle happy moments are great.
It's those happy moments that make the emotional moments even worse.
Yeah.
It's like, because you feel like their relationship is developed really well. You feel like in between episodes when you're not seeing them, that they're still traveling and they're still talking and they're still developing a relationship. That you can have those scenes where, "Oh, don't mind him, he just got an asshole voice. Isn't that right?" And he's like, "Yep." Like it's you feel like you only know that because they've talked about that earlier. Like she's brought up, like, "Do you is everything that you say sound like an asshole?" Like, you know, they have those moments between. So I think you're right that those moments of character building and relationship building are brilliant throughout, and they pepper it in ever so slightly every episode. They get like, she throws in a pun here and there, she gets those lines in.
Yeah, and even like after that whole emotional outburst in that room where, "I'm not your dad and you're not my daughter," and like the next scene where Joel gives her the option to, "You can do as you want." Nope, she hands in the bag straight away. It's like she skips the whole emotional beat and it's like, "No, I want you." It's like, that's sweet and all. She sees him as a father figure almost, but she's not acknowledging it because she's not so emotional unless push come to shove, aka the David episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure you can see that a lot of us have a lot to say about the Last of Us show, and quite eager.
Yeah, we'd highly recommend it. That's it. We're here to love these films and TV shows that we talk about. So we hope that you enjoy them too. We want to thank you very much for listening to this episode. We want to give a very special thanks to Richie, our guest. Thank you so much, Richie. We really appreciate you coming on to talk with us.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully I'll be on after the season 2 of The Last of Us wraps as well.
Definitely, we'll have you on for season 2. Hopefully we'll have you on for something before that, considering that might be in a year and a half to 2 years away, but we'll definitely have you on again. If you want to let us know what you thought of The Last of Us Season 1, you can contact us by email at talkingpicturespodcast1@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at talkingpicturespod. We post there every day that we upload an episode, not every single day, and that'd be ridiculous, but we post every Wednesday. If you wouldn't mind giving us 5 stars, we'd really appreciate it. But from all of us here at Talking Pics, thank you so much for listening.
Or give us 2 stars. Show us love. Tell us why you love us so much that you only give us 2 stars.
Don't tell them to give us 2 stars, tell them to give us 5. Thanks, Brian.
David, thank you. And thank you, Richard.